Welcome to this roundtable on peer-to-peer review process, and it's a topic that we have been preparing with Sarah, Aldet, and Nicoletta. I made some slides about the activities that we have done earlier, and then we have time to discuss on this. And maybe I can share my screen and show you something. I can now that I look who's present here. Many of you have been involved with the earlier activities, so it's good that you already know which slide. Okay, screen. Are you now seeing the PowerPoint?
We're seeing a very nicely looking young man.
Okay, so that's not me. How about now?
Yep.
Yes.
Now you see the PowerPoint, the title slide, the road, and so on. Okay, I have so many screens here, so I'm not sure which one is showing. Okay, peer-to-peer review roundtable, and like I mentioned before, have been working and preparing this, and this is basically the idea that we are going to work today. Short introduction on the need of this roundtable, then shortly introduce the work done earlier, some projects that have been doing these peer-to-peer review activities, and then we have a lot of time to discuss on this topic, and then maybe wrap up something. We have now 12 people here, so might be that we don't need any breakout rooms, but let's think about that once we are at that point of the session. Okay, so some introduction. There has been a lot of discussion on the idea that there should be this kind of peer-to-peer evaluation cycle, and something that each member institution would involve and use this kind of peer-to-peer activities to help stimulating growth and development of the program, and have feedback from the colleagues, and one of the maybe key points here is that how we show evidence that what's been happening since we have been involved with CDIO, and how CDIO have supported improvement of engineering education, and we are a huge community of universities and programs, and how we could share the best practices, and in this way help other programs to improve as well. So the benefits would be that we would share and learn from each other. We can build evidence on the positive impact of CDIO, and how it influences on the quality of engineering graduates, and then also this peer-to-peer review cycle might help us to identify some regional and global trends that also help improvement of the CDIO initiative itself. And basically two things that we need to discuss. First of all, how we can establish the cyclic peer-to-peer review, and then together with that, how we can establish some kind of research framework to collect the ideas, the information, the data that the reviews show, and in that way show the evidence of the influence of CDIO initiative. So these are the backgrounds for this roundtable, and now may I say that Aldet, Sarah, And if you have anything to add at any point of this, please interrupt and just take the word. Okay. So some of the work that we have done earlier, the first thing that I've been involved at least, and I think it was also Jens and Christina that were working on this first project that we did already in 2009. It was a two-year project funded by a Node Plus, and we had 4 universities, 4 institutes working on this kind of peer-to-peer review process, and this was very heavily relying on the CDIO self-evaluation. So we created some procedures, some practices, how to do it, and then we called it cross-evaluation model, which included visits to the other university, and then we had some meetings, and I think it was 2 or 3 days visit, and we had very good discussions on both ends of the universities. And then after that, we had a follow-up project, and it was the 4 same universities, but different programs from those universities. And then we had 2 universities from Baltic, and again, we continued the activities that we developed in the first round, and kind of tested them in a larger round set of programs. And also that was the time when we introduced CDIO activities for the Baltic universities, more or less. I remember having at least 1 or 2 workshops with Christina in was it in Vilnius or which was the city?
I think it was in Tartu.
Was it in Tartu? Okay.
We have been in Vilnius as well, so possibly both.
Yeah. And then after that, we had basically the largest project. In 2014 to 2016, we had a Erasmus Plus project with more universities joining here. So you have all the university logos down there, and this was now taking the review process a bit further, because the first 2 projects, they focused mostly on CDIO self-evaluation. For this project, there was many other initiatives and accreditation systems included, and the evaluation process was a bit larger than purely on CDIO self-evaluation. And this was also done in such a way that or the idea was actually that the universities could input their self-evaluation into a electric system, online system, and then we would have a database and a program that would find the suitable peer to be connected with your program, and then they would do the cross-pairing, and then they would do the full round of reviewing here. And the main idea was that we tried to find, or the system tried to find, programs that have had different strengths, different weaknesses, so they could kind of fulfill the elements that they were missing, and they could give some feedback to the other university then. Okay, Jens, maybe you could add something on this topic.
Well, I think we still have the program somewhere. I'm not sure if it actually is still running or not. I think the idea is fine, but of course there's a lot of a trust that you have to have built in here, that you actually need to be aware that others are kind of not hostile but friendly to you.
Yeah,
And then I think also it all comes down to people,
yes,
which I assume was also kind of the conclusion from the previous projects, that it has a lot to do with you have trust in people and you know the people and you actually are aligned some way what we're talking about, stuff like that.
yeah,
So the 3 projects has been done in a very kind of supportive but also closed environment.
yes. And I really agree on the things that you said, that it was pretty much dependent on the people who worked there. If the people were really committed on doing this, we had a good discussions, good results. But if they were kind of somebody else had told them to join, you could kind of see that they were not so much committed on doing these activities. Okay, so these have been the 3 projects that have done this kind of peer-to-peer review activities, and there have been a lot of positive things, but also some things that need to be addressed and developed further. And then we did some kind of study with Jens about the CDIO members and their ideas on CDIO altogether. We presented that on Aarhus conference, and some of the things that we found were, for example, these, and they are supporting the idea, the original idea of having this kind of roundtable and the need on showing the effects of CDIO, because the applications and the goals that were set in the CDIO applications when the universities applied, they showed a lack of metrics that how they can really understand how the CDIO approach impacts on their programs, and also the goals that they defined, they were not so easy to measure, and it was difficult to evaluate the success of CDIO. And one of the things that came up from the analysis was that we were thinking with Jens that maybe some kind of regular peer-to-peer review process could be included into the CDIO, and this could also make them to reflect what they have been doing and so on. And since then, Alder wrote this paper, and the topics were discussed in many of the workshops and roundtables during these years. And one of the recommendations was that maybe this kind of cyclic peer-to-peer evaluation process could be introduced into the CDIO initiative, and this could support the goals that we have been talking in here. Maybe Alder, you could open this a little bit more. We have seen your paper. I guess most of us, some of us maybe could join your session as well, but maybe some words more at this point.
Yeah, the main discussion about this was held in Singapore in 2019, the last international working meeting we had, and there, well, actually it was 2 things came together, where on one aspect was we want to have traceability and evidence that membership of the CDIO pays off, let's say like that, and that has been on our activity plan for quite a while, for years, I think, but still it's difficult to get a grip on that. And secondly, we see people who become a member with very challenging plans to implement CDIO, and then of course, well, we lose evidence, we lose we have no feedback cycle in which we say, well, this is really, yeah, that they are doing it, or they have problems in doing it, and we could help them, and more senior members could help them. And by discussing that in Singapore, we said, well, we can combine those if we have those peer-to-peer evaluations, reviews together, and we bring what we learned from that into a higher aggregation level to the CDIO. We could identify the trends that are occurring in the various regions, what are the needs for the various institutions per region. And yeah, particularly Nicoletta and I thought, well, if we combine those two aspects, that should be possible. But I think Juha, you said it, or Jens, it's very important that there is an atmosphere of trust in this, because it is not, it's a critical friend approach where we want to help each other to improve our education. And that is, I think, really a precondition to make this successful.
So if we sum up all the things, so if you want to read more about these different projects that we have here and also Andret's paper, so there are some references. I can share the PDF on the chat soon. Okay, so this is the need, and then we should start talking about this. And we have, how many people we have currently here? 13 people. We might take 2 breakout rooms. That's one possibility. And then within the breakout rooms, I have set up this Flinger wall, so we can use that to document and write some of the ideas that we come up. So there are these 2 questions, the blue one and the green one. And once you write your answers there, so if you choose the color first and then just take the box next to the question, then we have all the answers and ideas there. And maybe we could use now, we have, how much we have, David? That's 11:50. So if we have about 25 minutes in breakout rooms, and then we can come back and kind of have a shared discussion on the topic. So I'm asking from the host whether we can have 2 breakout rooms. Is it possible?
Yes, I can help. But I think Helene has her hands up.
Okay, I can see the hands now. So go on, Helen.
Yeah, I just need a bit of clarity on the process that you mentioned earlier on. When you do the pairing, how is it done? What criteria did you use to pair one institution with the other?
Well, if you think about this project, I think one of the key pairing idea was that we could find such pairs where they have different strengths, different weaknesses, so they can learn from each other. So that was one of the criteria. And one of the things that we discussed a lot during all these 3 projects was that whether the programs should be from the same field, same discipline, or is it okay that the programs are from different engineering fields. And I think during this project we had both. We had some of the pairs from the same field, and some were different. And of course there are pros and cons in both ways of doing. When you come from the same field, you are from the same field and you speak exactly the same language. When you come from the different fields, then you might end up asking such questions that you haven't thought by yourself. So that's of course one of the things that should be discussed on when if we are going to establish this kind of peer-to-peer review process. Maybe it's something that even the program itself can kind of wish that they are wishing for a program peer from the same field, or if they are open on having it from any field.
I think sorry, go ahead, Helen.
Okay, maybe one more question. How long was this process?
Oh,
It was 2 times kind of 2-day visits. So you came on day 1, and then you typically had an introduction to the system of that country, because that was also something that, even though it was within kind of Europe, this was done, there is a big difference in the higher education systems and how things are done and stuff like that. So that was first, they tried to contextualize and understand the context that you have actually landed in, was the first thing. And then then we had, I think it was 3 or 4 kind of standards. We had, I can't remember how many, 28 or something like that, different things. Of course, all the 12 CDIO standards, and then an additional ones that you have also set, focusing on student well-being or stuff like that, something that's not part of the CDIO standards. And then we had typically discussions on what people did on a given standard, and then we discussed that, and then what they did on the second standard, we're discussing that, and the third standard, and discussing that in depth.
So if you
going
think
back
about how much work it needed, the first thing was that you had to do the self-evaluation or the evaluation from your own program, and then write some descriptions, a little bit more maybe than you would do only for your internal purposes. So that was one task, and then you had to agree on the site visits, and that was, like Jens mentioned, typically 2 days on the other university, meaning 1 day for traveling on both ends, so about 4 days altogether. And I think it was about 2 to 4 people that were traveling from each university to the other side. And then, of course, before these site visits, you had to take some time to go through the material that the other university, other program has provided for you. And then after the site visit, you have to do some reflections on what you learned and what you could, what's the effects on your program, what are the takeaways for you. So
it sounds quite massive. Yeah? If I compare that with the visitation system in the Netherlands, it is just 1 day, and that is the formal accreditation of a program. But okay, that's a choice.
Yeah, and that's, of course, that was just the procedure that we had during this project.
Yeah.
But like Jens mentioned, one of the important things was that once you enter into another country, the higher education system might not be similar, and there are some context-related issues that you need to understand.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any more questions at this point?
Gareth has a question.
Gareth, yeah.
No, it's more just an add-on to the discussion that Juha and Jens are having, because from that end, it was actually Robin Clark who was the person formally involved in the project. I was at the time the program director and the head of department of the mechanical engineering group, which was the sort of chosen department to work with this, and we went through the. So I'm speaking as the program director who had to basically go through the process, basically rank where I felt I was on. I think it was probably about 28 questions, something like that, and give some justification. And when we then went through the engine, we got paired up with Juha and Jana and Turku. There was a delegation, I think it was 3 people came over from Turku to Aston, and they pre-identified areas that I think they were particularly interested in being supported in. So I think it was maybe some sort of active learning, and it was also, I think there was also an element of maybe diversification. Aston's a very, very diverse campus, and then from the Aston perspective, Robin and I went back there about a month later, where we were particularly interested in things like entrepreneurship that Turku was doing probably much more effectively than we were. So that was the idea of sort of sharing your strengths and weaknesses. It obviously had the inbuilt advantage that to a certain extent a lot of people already knew each other, so the trust that we mentioned is already there. So
thanks, Gareth.
Okay. Any more comments on the? Christina, you remember the first rounds of doing this?
Well, you know, I'm not because I'm on the university level. I'm not specifically involved in any program. So I think my role was more like giving workshops and raising awareness and supporting the program. So I was never in one of the program teams.
Yeah.
So my role was probably a bit special.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. So should we go to the breakout rooms and continue our discussion there, or what do you think? Is it better to have everybody in the same room and discuss here?
I think let's proceed as you have planned.
Okay, let's go to breakout rooms if we can get the breakout rooms here.
So how many? 2?
I think 2 is enough because there are altogether.
Then just randomly distribute us.
Okay.
Yes. Sarah, did you make many notes on the Klinger?
Oh, sorry, I thought it was muted. Yeah, so I made a few more notes. I was thinking that the other group need to be told that we're coming back.
I think they are closing the breakout rooms now. Or I can see the breakout. No, I can join, but I can't stop it.
Yeah.
I think you can type in chat that come back to the main room.
Okay, let's see.
By the way, so this is going to be one of the main streams for the fall meeting. So the notes from here will pass on to Radar. So I think he's expecting us to get in touch. So I don't mind putting it together and including you in the email.
And now that I looked at Klinger, I can see a lot of questions there.
Yeah, so that's really good because it feeds into the working group for the fall meeting.
Yeah.
So
we started with 2 questions and now we have about 10.
The easy part is asking all the questions. So I think
But I think the questions are just the right ones. These are the things that we need to agree and find answer. Hello, Anna. So they closed the breakout rooms.
Yes, now we're back.
Yes, you are back. Good. And how was your discussion?
If I can say something, then I think we mostly discussed kind of, first of all, why it's needed. So that was kind of the initial question that we talked a lot about, and whether this will change kind of the understanding of CDIO. And we're definitely not convinced in our group that we are not a vibrant organization, that we're on the decline, that we do something. So we were pretty, all of us, anxious about whether this would change CDIO too much into something like a QA or QE system, where the typical understanding is that, well, you do a lot of paperwork and put it on the shelf and nobody cares a damn about it, but you have to do it. So how we can inspire people to do something like this. So that, I think that was what we were talking mostly about, and ensuring that it is a voluntary thing to do. It's not something that you have to do. And we were also talking a lot about who is actually needing the evidence that we would like to collect, because, well, I see this as a way to move my university forward, and we have the evidence already, and we have the trust in, well, we actually gain something from spending time/money within this organization. So for us, at least, it's not a need. So please.
It seems that you have had a quite similar discussion that we had, because we also discussed that what's the how we make this activity attractive one. What's the benefit on doing it? And that's, I think that was the key point that we also discussed, that if we are going to do this kind of activity, we have to be able to show that it has some value. It is not just something that you have to do, rather it is something that helps you to improve your own program.
Yeah, and perhaps not something that you have to do, something that you could do. I think was our kind of main message here, and then perhaps we could, add in regional meetings, we could add a small session where people could say, well, we want to find somebody where we could cross pair with, or whatever we want to call it. We want to do something. We could have, as we have had previously, some introductory workshops talking about this way of doing things and in trying to inspire people to do it, stuff like that. So some kind of small, simple, supportive elements, rather than this big stick coming and saying, well, every third year you have to do this, and you have to, by the way, integrate it to your national accreditation system and the accreditation system by the engineering body and whatever systems that you already have in place.
Mm-hmm. So like we had our discussion, it seems that you also had the same kind of discussion, that we started with 2 questions and now we have a lot of questions. So we still need time to discuss and clarify all these things that we had in our discussion, and things that you have had in your discussion. And that's at least when I was thinking about this roundtable yesterday evening, and thinking that what kind of question, what kind of discussion we would have. I was thinking just this, that okay, there are a lot of more questions coming up when we start really thinking about this. Kristin, I think you raised your hand.
I think it's not so difficult to design a system that could actually be creative and helpful and interesting, and making it absolutely voluntary and not presenting it as something that is expected. I think that's a key thing, because then the first few people who do it are going to be quite enthusiastic, and when they start reporting interesting experiences, then I think others could come along. So that is one strategy, if you wish. However, I recognize that it would, if we think about the second question that you posed about collecting data and evidence, that would seriously compromise the evidence, because the selection bias would be awful. So you wouldn't get the like wet dream of robust data that you probably were aiming for. But I think that must be a secondary concern, because I think the success of CDIO so far has been actually the enthusiasm and engaging people in being creative and also finding their own interest among a quite multitude of ideas. So I think this could be really fun. One thing that I think is important is, if you think about the money issue, it costs money, it takes time, and there is travel involved, etc. I think it's very important that we have programs. The crosswise idea, I think, is very important, so that each program contributes their own costs, and CDIO should not be involved in any economic exchange, because that would turn CDIO into an accreditation agency or certification agency, and that would change the perception of what CDIO is. And I think in the history of CDIO, we have actually seen a couple of times when people wanted to make us a certification agency, And I think their motivation was actually to get a good consultancy gig out of it. And I think we should really be careful about that.
Yeah.
I'm involved in other communities where they have a quite hefty membership fee. And half the leadership discussions are about how to get that money in from the members. There is no space left for actually discussing the content and the interesting work. So let's not go into any economic model here. I would say voluntary and handled between the two partners.
Yeah. I don't know if you have the Flinga open, but there are quite a good number of good comments there, and the Flinga wall is still open. So if you afterwards have some ideas and things that you would like to add there, please do so. Otherwise, this topic will be on the agenda of the fall meeting, and we will continue on working this. Maybe Alden, you want to say something about this and how to proceed?
Well, no, I mean, as I said before, it is a topic that has come up in the council discussions many times, and in Singapore in particular. And well, I've addressed it, and I think as the council, we have to sort it out. Do we want to do something with it, or just kill it, or neglect it? I mean, that's also an option. This is all the recommendations that came up in my paper. I mean, we can simply say, forget about it. We just continue as we are.
Or find some kind of midway solution.
Anything is okay. I mean, this is just popping up from our community.
Yes. Good. I think we have already run out of our time. I would have loved to continue discussing with you, because so many experts in the same room, and happy to see you all. And this thing will continue later today on the council meeting. I think we talk a little bit about this, and then in the fall meeting anyway. At this point, I would like to say thank you, and let's have a short break, and then continue in the next sessions. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.